Did you wear a kilt in Scotland? I could kind of see what the kilt thing's about.
That's what the mural list look like.
Oh, that's it? Haggis is a sheep's stomach? I love this dumpster too. I look at that dumpster and I'm like, that dumpster's badass.
Yeah.
Come with us as we explore the visual arts capital of Texas, San Angelo. Today we ride around with local artist Alejandro Castanon as he breathes new life into one of his masterpieces at the local pop art museum, gives us a deep dive into what's going on in the local art scene, and tells us his story as to how this self-taught artist and military veteran ended all the way up from Europe to here in West Texas and San Angelo. So if you guys want more content like this, make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe. Hope you enjoy the video.
Oh, what's going on, my man?
What's up, man?
What's going on, guys? This is Carson with the San Angelo Local List. This is one of our first YouTube videos. Make sure you hit that like button. Check out the San Angelo Local List on Facebook. We have an Instagram page and also a TikTok. So guys, I'm here with Alejandro Castanon. He's actually a local artist here in San Angelo. So kind of before we get started with everything, can you give us a little bit of an introduction, just kind of who you are and then where the people can go to find out some more information about you and your art?
Yeah. My name's Alejandro again, and I've been a local artist here in San Angelo since 2011. You can find my artwork all around town. We're going to go check out some murals today. And you can find my website at alejandrofineart.com, or you can also check out sanangeloart.com, which is all art of San Angelo.
That's on sanangeloart.com?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, believe it or not, I got that domain.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good SEO traffic on that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So we're going to go ahead and just pull off right here and go check out some of Alejandro's art.
Cool.
How long have you been here in San Angelo yourself?
Oh, man, off and on, really. We got here when I was about 17, back in 01. We dropped in straight from Frankfurt, Germany.
Oh, wow.
I'd grown up overseas pretty much my entire life. And it was kind of shocking to get here.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was a big shock. It was the middle of my senior year, and we moved here. And they were like, you got 3 schools to choose from. You can go to Wall, Lakeview, or Central. And I was like, who's got the most kids? And they're like, Central. I was like, all right, bet. Let me get Central. So yeah, that was that. And then in 2003, I graduated 01, and then 03, I went to the military. I was in the Air Force for 8 years. So I left. And then I came back in 2011. And so yeah.
Awesome. So you've been in San Angelo for a while now. So and I know you said you moved from Europe originally, correct?
Yeah.
So was San Angelo the first place you've been in America, or had you been other places?
Well, I'd been to a couple other places in the United States, mostly Florida.
Okay.
We vacationed once in Vegas, but I had never really lived in the States for long.
Yeah, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes for a second and just kind of think of like what my perspective would be just coming into San Angelo after just having such a different life experience growing up.
I tell you what, the biggest shock for me was the fact that, first of all, I'd never been to Texas before, really.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't expecting so many cars. I was expecting a lot more horses and like people riding around. It's just from like the movies and TV shows I used to watch. But then like going to Walmart, that was kind of a big shock. I'd never been to a Walmart before, and the biggest disappointment, and it's the only disappointment I really had, was the fact that Wiener Schnitzel didn't actually have Wiener Schnitzels. We pulled up and they were like, yo, you want to get something? I was like, yeah, what do I get? There's nothing here except for Frito pie. I don't even know what that is. And they're like, oh, you'll love it, just get that. So yeah, that was my initial.
So when you came to San Angelo, were you initially just plugged, like did you just go out and originally just try to find the art scene, or was that something that just kind of naturally happened in your time?
Yeah, it kind of naturally happened when we ended up coming back. When I came back in 11, that's when I really kind of started looking at artwork, not as an artist, because I really wasn't an artist. That one's mine right there, that green one.
Oh wow.
With the portrait, yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna just circle.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we'll come back.
That's cool. Yeah, well, I wasn't an artist yet when I came back. I was just kind of interested in getting to know the community. So I did a lot of volunteering. And then I opened up the art gallery that same year when I got here. It was later on that year.
Oh, wow.
I just jumped into it. I didn't know what I was doing at all, really. We were doing art classes and stuff, that paint and sip.
Oh, yeah.
We started with that, and I hired an instructor, Crystal Goodman, and she ended up mentoring me and teaching me how to paint, and from there I just kind of took off on my own.
So how many years, like technically, you said what year was it that you came to San Angelo?
2011.
2011. So we're in 2024 right now. We're talking about 13 years.
13 years after I came back, yeah.
13 years after you came back, where you've kind of like in your adult life been plugged into the art scene.
Right.
How have things changed from 13 years ago to now? And kind of the reason that I ask is because I actually came to San Angelo roughly a decade ago now, and it seems like the art scene has blown up. So from your perspective, what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of been like a little bit of a slow burn at first, just because when I first got here, there were only 2 private galleries. It was mine and Raul Ruiz, and I think it was like the art club, and that was pretty much it. And now, we've got, well, that and the Chicken Farm. I shouldn't say that. Chicken Farm Art Studio was open at the time, and that was really the art scene back then, was the Chicken Farm.
Really?
It was really, Roger Allen was really kind of, pushing things along with the Chicken Farm back then.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of great artists came out of the Chicken Farm, and but then it started to pick up steam with Art in Common Places, and then Raw opened, and we really started to get some more prominent artists, both coming out of here and moving here.
Really?
And that really helped, as well as like the mural scene. The mural scene really started to pick up, and we got some great muralists in town and graffiti artists that helped push that, I think, the whole art scene forward, especially Inx. He's a tattoo artist, but he's a muralist as well. He really, I think he was kind of he ignited everything, because his talent is so raw.
Mm-hmm.
That it kind of pulled everybody behind him and started doing a lot more modern murals.
And that's actually what I was going to ask, is like, what do you think was, and you just said it, what was that kind of driving factor that really got it going? And then, outside of like what got it going, what do you think keeps pulling people here? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe San Angelo has some kind of a designation as like an art capital within Texas.
Yeah, a couple years ago we got the Visual Arts Capital Texas designation.
And what exactly does that mean? Do you know who that's from?
Yeah, that's from the state of Texas. They went all the way to our state Congress, and a couple representatives from here, mostly the DMO, which is at the Chamber, the Visitor Center, and they went up. I think it was Diane Bays. I think Howard Taylor. I think he might have went, but a couple people came here representing us to go apply for that designation, and we got it. Which was crazy, because there's Fredericksburg, there's Marfa, there's Austin.
I know, and that's why I wanted to ask about it, because like just from me as like a general public perspective, I hear, you hear, oh, we're this, we're that, but to hear that that's like an official designation that we won in competition with other cities, like I think that just goes to show like how serious the art scene is in here in San Angelo.
I think the biggest reason why we start getting more people is because there's been a lot of momentum that has developed from different parts of the art scene here, not just the murals, not just the individual artists, but different groups, like the In Plein Air artists that every year they come here nationally, internationally really, come here to paint for like a week.
Heard of that.
And it's amazing what they've done with that. So there's different elements that are going on that have kind of pulled artists from different places here to San Angelo. And I think the biggest thing is just the cost of living.
The cost of living?
Yeah, because it's so hard to get going as an artist. There's a lot of expenses that you have to account for, and the income doesn't come quickly. It comes after a lot of work, proving, your credibility, your skills as an artist improving. And so it comes after a while, but here's a great place to get. I'm kind of proof of that. Getting going here as an artist was a lot easier than if I would have done it in Austin, because of the fact that the cost of living here, everything is accessible. Everything was within 10-minute drive at the most.
That's why I love it.
On a bad day. And so it's, it has a charm about it that it makes it easy for you to get going. And then it's like on a home base now with the internet and reach. You can do a lot of that. I have clients as far away as California.
So this is like your hub, but in reality there's people accessing your art all over the place.
Yeah.
And the kind of what I'm taking away from what you're saying is like San Angelo almost acts as like a really good incubator for people who are trying to start out in the art scene and get going.
It's turned into that for sure.
Yeah.
And even, I would say even before, you have artists like, Michelle Cuevas, Rene Alvarado. They started off at the chicken farm, and that in itself kind of was an incubator. It is sort of an incubator, even though.
And like, just for somebody who may be listening to this who doesn't know about the chicken farm, what is the chicken farm?
Oh man, it's a legacy art organization. I call it an organization. It's a business. But it's called the Chicken Farm Art Center. It's on the north side of town, off MLK Drive.
Okay.
And it houses, many art studios and a pottery studio that was Roger Allen's.
Wow.
And he passed away a couple of years ago, but some new owners came in and picked it up and have really ran with it. And it's been there for, I think it's close to 40 years it's been over there.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I know you just said that there's new owners, really new.
Really new.
Recently new. I'm pretty sure that I actually met the owner of the chicken farm the other day at a YPSA event.
Oh, Justin and Chastity.
Yeah. Justin was his name. And he was telling me he's got big plans for that place. And he just seemed so excited. One thing that stuck out to me about the chicken farm specifically was, and he shared this as something that a lot of people may not know, it's been around for over 50 years.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been the same owner in that time, but somebody has always kind of come around and picked it up and kept it going.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. Yeah, that if any place is the incubator, I would say the Chicken Farm Art Center has been that
really
for decades.
Is that a play on the chicken there with the incubator?
Maybe I haven't thought about that before, but that's funny that you say that. So yeah, now that we're here, it's kind of we're at like the precipice of the modern West. This whole, when people go from, if they're coming from Austin or San Antonio and they're headed to El Paso, they can come through San Angelo, and when they come through it and they see all the murals and the artwork, it kind of sets the tone for what the modern West is. Even if they go past Texas and they go to like Albuquerque or Santa Fe or even the outskirts of California, you'll see the beginnings of the modern West probably here.
Gotcha.
And kind of what that looks like. It's a mixture of, you're coming up on a Zoe Flores mural right here.
Oh, wow.
And you have a mixture of like modern, graphic design mixed with, Western aesthetics and themes. And you're starting to see a lot more of that out here.
So as I'm driving through San Angelo, I see art like you just pointed out, and you knew who the artist was. Yeah. If somebody was driving through San Angelo and they saw a piece of art that they wanted to get more information from, is there anywhere that they can go to kind of find out? Because there's so much. Mm-hmm. I was reading online the other day about Art in Uncommon Places, the nonprofit that organizes a lot of this stuff, from my understanding. And I was reading that they had over 100 installations across San Angelo.
They do. They're probably the best source because they've kept up really well with all these projects, especially the more recent murals. They are really the ones that have been heading that up.
Okay.
And we're pulling up to these right here, and these are all done by Art in Uncommon Places. They got QR codes up here.
Oh, I never even noticed that.
If you wanted to get to know who the artist was, you could probably scan that one next to mine. It'll have my information on there.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, Art in Uncommon Places is probably one of the best places to look at in terms of art around town, whether it's mosaics or murals.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I was on their website the other day. I didn't know if that was like the best place to get the information, so I'm glad I asked you about that.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the best place to start.
Yeah. But yeah, that's so cool. Like, I was literally just thinking, like, how would you ever go about that? And then as we pull up, they already thought about that. They have the QR codes next to the art and just like ready for somebody to walk up and get that information. So, well, cool, man. So we just pulled up to your first piece. Let's get out and check it out and
see what's going on here at Paintbrush Alley. That's it.
Yeah, this was, gosh, I want to say it was my second mural I've done here in town.
So this is you right here, and this. So
Yeah.
you painted everything between these two yellow
Yeah.
pillars right here.
Yeah. And I remember when I first got here in 11, when I came back, and it looked totally different. I mean, this was, I don't know if you remember it, but it was really some old artwork that was on here. It's falling apart. It's really, really faded. And I remember looking at it, and I was like, man, I wish I could redo that. That'd
Yeah.
be so dope if I could paint over some of that. I was just starting out. I would never tackle a mural that early on.
Yeah.
And then they asked me if I wanted a piece, and I was like, yeah. Yeah.
So was this one of the first bigger pieces that you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the bigger ones for sure.
And I had no idea, like you just said, I had no idea there was artwork here before. Is that kind of why they chose this place specifically for Paintbrush Alley?
Yeah, there was artwork here in the alley, but it was so outdated. It had been done like, almost 2 decades before, like in the 90s. So it was really kind of falling apart and faded. It really needed a new look and a refresh. And that's when Art and Common Places decided to come in.
And how did you get connected with Art and Uncommon?
Oh, I've collaborated with Julie Raymond over there since I came back in 11.
Okay.
I got plugged in with her through Rod Bridgman, who was at Sealy Flats, in Sealy Flats, and I got plugged in through them. We would collaborate on projects because I had the gallery.
Okay.
So it kind of made sense I was involved from the very beginning of a lot of that stuff. So we were just collaborating a lot, and she knew I was trying to do more murals, and so she actually invited me to do the one that we're going to look at here in a minute. And then this opportunity came up, and she was like, "You want it?" I was like, "Yeah."
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. So is working with Art and Uncommon Places, is that like an invite only type deal, or
Not always.
like let's just say that I'm an artist here in San Angelo, and I just think Paintbrush Alley is the coolest thing in the world. I would love to get involved. Would I just reach out to Art and Uncommon Places and just kind of let them know what I'm doing and see where I could fit in?
Absolutely. They're really great with working with a lot, especially new artists. I think they've done a good job of, I mentioned Zoe Flores before, and she just graduated high school a few years ago.
Really?
And so she really hit the ground running, but she has a talent, and she was willing to get to work. And, I don't know how that relationship developed, but, it's a good sign that they're willing to work with younger artists that want to just try to develop their work. And so, just reach out to them and say, hey, I'm an artist. This is what I do. I'd love to be involved. What can I do to help? And even if it's just volunteering to help them do stuff on a bigger project like a mosaic, they'd love to have you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I have the most my experience when it comes to painting is pretty much when I tried to DIY paint my house. And I say that to say that ended up being a month-long project. So when I look at a piece of art like this, I just can't even fathom how long this took you. How many hours or how much time do you put into putting something like this together?
On a just working on it basis, that time scale, I would say it probably took maybe 15 to 16 hours total.
Okay.
If we were to add up the time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen all at once. We would love for that to happen within the right conditions.
Yeah.
It can work, but it doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess, because being an outdoor art platform, it's raining, whatever the situation is, there's tons of stuff that could hold you up.
Yep.
And then one thing that I always wondered when I come by this place, and I'm sure other people out there have too, how does it stay? Is there some kind of a seal once you get done with everything? And basically what I'm getting at is how long will this last before somebody either has to come put a new mural up or you have to come up and touch it up? Or how does the maintenance of the art work?
So if the seal is on there, it can last up to 18 to 20 years.
Oh, wow.
If there's a good seal on there.
Okay.
But even then, it'll start to degrade after about 12 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it also depends on the kind of paint that you use. If you're using straight acrylic paint out of the jar, probably won't last as long. And we'll actually see that on the mural that we're going to look at over there. That one's a lot more faded. It was my first one, so I didn't know what I was doing. But you can come back and touch it up, and then they reseal it like every year.
Okay.
So it's really going to last a lot longer. It's going to have that vibrancy still.
And that's part of like Art and Uncommon Places' role in here is like they kind of make sure that stuff happens.
Yeah, that's part of what they have to agree. They don't have to agree to it when they're working with the city, but in some cases the city asks, how are you going to maintain it?
Yeah.
And so they have to provide evidence about.
Gotcha. Yeah. So before we walk over to this next piece that you did and check it out, let's say you had somebody who was sitting here checking out this piece of art. Is there anything specifically that you would want them to know about it?
Yeah.
And that you would just want to point out that you think is interesting?
Yeah. So this piece was actually inspired by one of my favorite artists, Alphonse Mucha.
Okay.
I don't think I'm saying his name right, but that's how I hear it in my head. And so he was an artist around the turn of the 20th century. And he really kind of developed a very French Nouveau, art style. People that look him up, you probably fall in love with his work. It's very recognizable. But I wanted to do like sort of a twist on his artwork to include what I've become more familiar with in this area. And so, I'm Mexican, and I wanted to tie in some of my own culture into that. So I took the French woman that he had painted, and I put a bandana on her and makeup, and it's like a very Chicana sort of Mexican, Mexican American sort of style influence, and it's using one of his references, but putting somebody that's a little bit more modern, that would look more familiar to our area.
Yeah.
In our culture. And so that's kind of
I love that.
Yeah, that was kind of the twist. I've been kind of following that for a while, and I like that kind of style,
And that's so funny because like that's the feeling I got when I walked up to the piece. Like when I checked it out, I had that Chicana look, and I was kind of thinking it has like some traditional elements as far as like how it's put together. And this is, I'm not an artist by any means, just the general thoughts I get when I walk up to something like this.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so cool because it gives me a feeling like an older style, but in the modern age.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was going for.
Awesome. Cool. Well, cool, man. Let's walk around the corner and check out your other piece.
This is the whole theme of this particular, the paintbrush alley when they redid it was around the theme of the movie Giant.
Okay.
And the movie Giant was a film with Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, and people are going to really be angry that I forgot. Because I did the mural of him over there.
Yeah.
It'll come to me in a second. But the movie was shot in Marfa.
Okay.
So it was West Texas.
Okay.
And so they wanted to capture that movie's, essence here in the paintbrush alley. So everything you look at is in reference to the movie.
To the movie Giant.
Yeah.
And I've never seen the movie Giant. That's an older film, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was filmed in like the 50s.
The 50s?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, everything around here is just so vibrant and it stands out. Like, it's just really cool to kind of walk through and check everything out. I'm definitely going to have to come back on another day and really spend some time scanning these QR codes and finding out some information about the people involved and just kind of, actually, do you know what comes up when you scan the QR codes? Like what kind of information? We'll scan one of yours on the way out, but I was just kind of wondering.
It's, I think it's the profile for the artist.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got like their bio on it, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So are we coming up to one of your
this
pieces?
was the first one that I ever did.
This one right here on this wall?
Yeah, this mural right here is
Oh,
the
wow.
first one I ever did. It's really starting to kind of fall apart, but I got to come back and retouch it.
I would never know.
You would never know. Shoot, that makes me feel better. So that was the first one. You can see somebody already tagged it up right here. But I'm like, it says outlaw, so I guess it kind of goes with it. So I was like, I'm not going to mess with it for right now. But I got to come back, and I really got to touch it up. And I've come so much further along now, especially doing murals, that I think I could make it could look a lot better.
Yeah.
Now that I'm going to come back and touch it up.
If you were to come back and touch it up, would you be trying to kind of change anything or really just kind of enhance what's already there?
Just enhance it.
Gotcha.
Enhance it. Yeah, I would keep the kind of the essence of it, the colors, because I think it's what makes it memorable. But I would enhance some details.
Yeah.
You know.
And I don't know if this was like the goal, but it's almost one of those things where like as I come up on it, the things that stand out are all the bright, vibrant colors. But as I step away, it kind of comes into focus.
Yeah.
Like more and more detailed as you kind of get a little bit farther back.
Yeah.
Did like you paint that into it intentionally, or is that just kind of how it comes
kind
out?
of my style. Like I came out of a very impressionist style, which is, it gives the impression from standing far away, which is the kind of thing you just described.
Yeah.
That's impressionism. Like
Okay.
if you get up close, you can see that it's a lot of, paint marks and brush, and lines that don't look perfect. But as you step away, you can see they come together really nicely. So,
Yeah, I mean-
Van Gogh was a impressionist.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I've heard the term impressionist, but I didn't know
Yeah.
definitively what that means. But now that you kind of point out that stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that's an impressionist
Yeah,
type
you pull away, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. So that's kind of what it is. Yeah, that's where it comes from.
So, I asked you at your other piece. I'm going to go ahead and ask you again right here. Let's just say somebody was standing here looking at this piece. What would you want to point out to them that maybe they wouldn't know if they were to just walk up on the piece, as far as like kind of what went into it, or the thoughts, or, really just what you would want to share to somebody who was checking out this piece?
Yeah, I think probably is the method of going about creating all the colors. I've gotten to a point where I like using a lot of different materials. So at first it was like, just spray paint, get it everywhere. And then I was like, oh, I gotta get real loose because this is taking forever. So, in the past I've used like you just go to the dollar store and get like a mop.
Oh yeah.
And you just dip it in some paint and you just start kind of like going to town on it, or you get like an old broom, and you just start pushing that paint around with it.
Yeah. And like, that's something that I never would even thought of. So like, when it comes to this piece right here, was this strictly spray paint?
No. Like I said, that if you use acrylic paint out of the jar, especially for a mural, if it's not sealed properly or right away, it won't. It'll fade really quickly. And that was the case on this piece. Is I used a lot of paint out of the jar. Because it was my first time. I'd never painted this scale before, so I wasn't comfortable using spray paint to do all the detail work. So yeah, you can tell where it's faded because a lot of the detail was done with brush.
And so when it comes to these colors too, like, do you go when you're picking out your paint? You're saying you use the acrylic paint out of a jar. Are you making any of these colors yourself by mixing some of those paints together?
Sometimes.
Or are you just taking what you can get your hands on?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes I'm mixing it up and applying it, and then sometimes it's just like whatever I get my hands on.
Yeah.
And I'll make it work. I never used to have a plan. I used to just be like, I think I have the image, I know what I want to do, and I would just go for it. And that's how it turns out.
Yeah.
I do more of a plan now because it's, it can get a little chaotic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you don't have a plan, it's a little bit too stressful.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
So when you're working on a piece like this, do you typically just work on one piece, or do you kind of have a few things that you're working on at one time and just kind of work on this here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting a little burnout on this. Let me go over to work on this. Or
it's better for me, for my process, if I have multiple things going on.
Yeah.
Because one thing can bleed over to another. I might take a lesson from one thing I'm doing and be like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Or I learned a way to do it and it somehow spills over to another piece. If anything, it just keeps me from being bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because especially if it's a big project and it's taking a long time, I'll get bored with it. And I'll be like, I need to do something else. Yeah.
And just to clarify, I don't know if we've already talked about this. This is what you do full time. So like, or if am I right, or am I?
I've got a day job.
Okay.
But it's minimal.
Okay.
I work from home. It's a remote job. So most of the time I'm doing art.
Most of the time
I'm doing art.
And I guess the reason that I bring that up is because I'm sure you have to use strategies like that to keep yourself, motivated and working on the next thing, and just like just keep yourself working essentially.
It's not anything different than, taking another creative, project, like for instance, what we're doing here, with the videos. Like there's a creative process. You go from, idea to try to fleshing out the idea to testing out the idea, then, executing on it, and then go back to the drawing board and see what you need to change.
Yeah.
What you can learn from that. So it's very similar in all creative fields. You have to just kind of test it out. You can't take too long in the planning phase, or you might convince yourself it's not good enough and then you don't do it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And after that, you gain more confidence in your process.
Yeah. I like that. It's really cool. So I'm going to walk up over here and just give this QR code a scan.
Go for it.
Let's see what comes up. Cool. And then so all these QR codes, they have the name of the artist right here on the bottom of it. But yeah, you can see right here, it comes up and shows it's directly onto your profile.
That's what the mural list to look like.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, now
You can see.
Now I can see what you mean when you say it's a little faded.
Yeah.
But yes, wow.
See, that's when I first finished it. You can see how the shadows look a lot better on the face, the light coming down, just more vibrancy, It's really, when I finished it, I was like, wow, I can't believe I did that.
I can't believe it. I can't able to say that's so cool. Anybody who comes out here, make sure that you scan this QR code and check this thing out, because like Alejandro's saying, the colors, the vibrancy it's on a whole nother level. It's awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then it has some of the information that we've already talked about here, and a little more information about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This profile picture is really cool, by the way.
That was an idea I had. I still have that jacket too.
Really?
Yeah, it's a painted jacket, and we had a photo shoot. Yeah, it was really, I use it a lot for a lot of my promotional material.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so we checked out 2 of your pieces here. Let's walk around and let's point out a piece that you didn't do that you just kind of like.
Oh,
If you were to walk through here with somebody and they were like, all right, Alejandro, I've seen enough of your stuff, man. Why don't you point out something else around here?
Yeah, let's do
Why don't you
that.
show me something that stands out to you?
So there's 2 pieces that I really, really like. This one is probably one of the more iconic ones
that comes out of here because it's so big.
And you're talking about the woman right here, this bigger one on the wall?
Yeah, this is supposed to be Elizabeth Taylor,
Oh, okay.
but it's done by Inx, the artist I mentioned earlier.
Okay, and he's the one you were saying is a muralist as well as a tattoo artist?
Yeah, you can see his signature down here.
Okay.
And
INX, yeah.
yeah, this is one of my favorite. If you get a chance to watch him, he's so quick.
Mm-hmm.
He can do an entire wall in a day.
Really?
He's fast, and he most of the time comes up with all the design work out of his head.
That's insane.
Now, something this complicated, he definitely had to use a reference photo and plan it out. But I've seen some of his stuff where he doesn't use that. He just straight from the noggin.
Yeah.
And it's really impressive, and his style is really recognizable. He's done some pretty significant murals here in town.
So from what you told me today, I would assume if you're doing it as fast as you're saying, he probably did the majority of this, if not all of this, with spray paint.
Probably all of it.
Probably all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, probably all of it.
That's amazing. Yeah, the detail in it especially. It's so cool. And you can walk right up to it. Like how many places, like, you go to a museum and they're all, don't touch the art, don't touch the art. And I'm sure they're not encouraging people to come over here and start rubbing on all the walls or anything like that. But just the fact that you can walk right up to it and feel the texture of the wall, see the paint, see just like, it's just a different experience.
And it's not faded.
Yeah,
You can tell he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, man, you can pick out any spot. He's like, this spot right out of the sunlight, right here, keep it from fading.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. You can tell his level of skill.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the other one is actually back by that way.
Cool. Well, let's head that way and check it out. And then I think we're gonna head out after this and check out another one of your pieces. Where are we going next?
Yeah, the Pop Art Museum.
Pop Art Museum.
It's an outdoor museum.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this dumpster too. Like, what a cool way. Like, I want to say when I was reading on the Art and Uncommon Places website, one of the things that they try to do is not just put it in uncommon places, but use uncommon mediums and materials. And like, just you think of a dumpster and you're like, oh, trash, gross, stay away. And I look at that dumpster and I'm like, that dumpster's badass.
Yeah, I don't want to dump anything in there.
I'd put that dumpster out by my house. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And you can take like if you were to redo those 2 chairs, suddenly it'd be an art piece.
Yeah.
Like that's the cool thing about artworks, is it can change the environment. And that's part of what the economic development goal is, by using art in that designation that we got to help bring more businesses over here, to bring more families down here, because the art is what helps create that feeling for the city.
Gotcha.
And it's part of economic development. Art is part of that. And in bigger cities that I think are also doing a good job of that, it's one of their main things that they like to talk about because it really does bring a lot of people. This is the one I wanted to talk about over here. I believe Che did this one. He's another, yeah, that's Che right there. This is probably my other favorite one that he's done. The girl with the pearl earring.
And that is
very famous Dutch
I was about to say,
painting.
that is actually a painting that I do know, that
Yeah.
I have seen before.
Yeah, it's a Dutch master's painting. I forget the artist's name, but it's probably like my favorite one in town, simply because of he nailed the portrait. It's amazing. It's almost exactly, if not right on with the original. But it has its own take on it. He has like this, like, you know, it's got like a phase shift, you know, the exact same thing of her, but, you know, less prominent. It's translucent. I mean, and I think he did that, everything with spray paint.
Everything was spray paint.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy, man. I just like, man, I just can't even wrap my mind around, like, because like, you know, like I said, I'm not an artist. I don't claim to be. I don't claim to understand everything. So when I see something like this, and just like hear someone like you talk about it and explain what goes into making a piece like this, I mean, it kind of blows my mind. And I love this piece too. I love that it just like, you know, makes you think. That's what I like about being in this whole area, because like you were saying, I see this piece and I immediately am just like, oh, that looks familiar somehow. I don't really know how, but then I recognize, okay, yeah, the girl with the pearl earring. Shout out to my 4th grade art teacher. I remember her telling me about that one. But then you come up and like me personally as an outside observer, I like catch myself wondering, you know, did he mean to put those leaves there? Did somebody come and put those leaves there who wasn't supposed to? Like, I don't even know. And I just start wondering like what was going through his mind as he painted this.
I would love to ask Che that same question. And I know him. I should probably text him and ask him, like, whoa, what? Well, how did you come up with this design? But he's just a phenomenal artist. Yeah, this piece is amazing. It's one of my favorite ones in town.
And Che is another local San Angelo artist here in town.
Yeah, he's another muralist, graffiti artist. In fact, him and Inx, and then Tunes, his name is Maynard Zamora, they all sometimes collaborate together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we're trying to get together for a collaboration to redo the mural I did on the Old Central Firehouse.
Okay.
I did that one, but that one's fading too. So as you can tell, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. But it gives you an opportunity to go through and fix it and maybe try something new. So we're trying to collaborate on that one together.
That's awesome.
If we can make it, our schedules work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Heck yeah, man. Well, cool, man. Thank you for coming and showing us this piece over here. I guess let's jump back into the truck and go check out your next piece.
Yeah, let's do it.
Go ahead and get turned around over here. We'll head over to the Pop Art Museum and check out a couple of your other pieces. So, you know, we talked a little bit about San Angelo earlier. I'm interested a little bit about, or not a little bit, a lot of it. That's what we're here to talk about, is you and art. So tell me a little bit about yourself outside of being an artist. I know, like, you know, I've spoke to you in the past, and, you know, our conversations have been more business related, just in the capacity that we met the last time. So I know you have some, and this is, you know, not to toot your horn too hard, but I would consider you a successful businessman as well.
Yeah, that was something that I didn't know I was going to be into growing up. You know, I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to like. Somehow I gravitated to business and worked for the SBDC for a few years.
Okay.
Which is where we met. And but outside of that, you know, I've got some other interests as well. You know, right now I'm training for a marathon, which is my first time.
Really?
Yeah, I'm training for that right now. It's in June up in Montana. So
what prompted that?
my wife is a marathon runner.
Okay.
And she was like, I'm going to run it. Do you want to come and do you want to run it with me? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to, I'm 40, so I'm like, I'm not going to, you know, put that off any longer. Now's the time to do it if I'm going to do it.
So what is the farthest you've run before?
10 miles when I was younger was the longest I'd ever run.
And how far are you into training right now?
Like the distance?
Well, just like how long have you been getting ready?
Only since January.
Only since January.
Yeah.
So here's why I ask you.
Yeah. I have zero running experience myself, but I also took on the feat of running a marathon one time in 2015.
What was that one?
So I had never run farther than 3 miles in my life when I took this on. And I just decided one day, like, it's time to do something hard and try something that I've never done. I went online and just downloaded a Couch to Marathon running program.
Wow.
And it literally just like lined it out. You start like essentially half a year before the actual marathon and just gradually ramp up. But I will tell you the one thing that I didn't expect about training, that I don't know if you've come across this yet. When you run the marathon, you don't ever run the full 26.2 before the marathon. You train, or at least I didn't.
No.
I trained all the way up to about 20 miles, and then I went for the marathon, and the whole time I was just terrified that I max out at like, 22 or whatever is like a mile right underneath the marathon. And I was just like, man, I really don't know how confident I feel about this, but I finished. So that was my only goal.
That's awesome.
That gives me a lot of hope.
I think you got it, man. You're in a lot better shape than I was. So.
We'll see. We will see. We will see. So yeah,
we might have to do a follow-up on after the
we
marathon.
will maybe in June, yeah, after the marathon's done. So yeah, I'm training for that. So I like to work out, and more mobility training as you get older. Like the weight training tends to fall off a little bit, and it's more about mobility, like, wanting to be able to, I have 2 kids. Okay. I have a daughter that's about to be 19, and then I have a son that's 6.
Oh, wow.
And so I don't really have to keep up with her anymore, but with him I do. And he's pretty athletic. He's kind of an active kid, so I have to keep up with him. So that's another motivation I have, is just trying to keep up with them and spend time with them.
Oh, I can imagine. Any plans to have any more kids, or just the 2?
Not yet. We haven't decided yet. But for right now, we're just hanging out the way things are now, which is great.
Yeah.
And then outside of that is just book reading. I do a lot of community stuff with the artists here in town, which is fun. I like doing that, and a little bit of music production. I'm just getting into music. It's just for fun.
Yeah.
It helps with my creativity. I love music, and so it's nice to be able to express creativity in a different way outside of what you normally do.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's inspirational to hear like all the different things. Like, so many people, and I can only talk about my personal experiences and the people that I've been around, but like, I see people as they get older and they kind of get into their habits, and just hearing you say how you're trying to almost do the opposite and like try new things and experience new things. And, like you were saying, what you said, you were 40 years old, 40 years old, trying to take on a marathon.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. I guess it goes to show the type of person that you are and why you've been as successful as you have. It's obvious that you step up to a challenge.
I like to do stuff that I don't know how to do, obviously, with the murals. But I'm like, it's fine. Like, the more mistakes I make, the sooner I make them, the quicker I learn. So I'll do it even if I'm uncomfortable, as long as my interest is piqued. If I can't do it, that doesn't usually stop me.
Yeah.
And even if I don't do it well, that still doesn't stop me. Yeah. So it's kind of been something I've grown into. I never really used to be like that, but I think my first taste of that was art, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I can't paint," but if you have an interest to do it, then you can.
Yeah,
you can.
So I know also I did a little reading on your website before we met up, and I know you have a passion for travel.
I do.
Where is the coolest place that you've been? And then where have you been most recently?
Okay. Coolest place I've been was probably Inverness, Scotland. It's in the Highlands of Scotland. Beautiful area, beautiful people. Just a lovely experience. It was magical, I would say.
Really?
Yeah. It was so amazing. And I've been to the UK before, but I'd never been that far north. So that was really an amazing experience for me. I've been to a lot of places, but that for me was kind of
stands out a lot.
And that's where me and my wife went on one of our very first trips. when we first got together. So it's extremely special for us. Most recently, Mexico.
Mexico?
Yeah, I was born in Mexico, but I had never been to this part of Mexico. So we went to Mérida, which is in the Yucatan, which is actually just a few hours away from Cancun. So we went there, and it's a beautiful city, and connected with my roots, and just got to enjoy being around other Mexicanos and speaking the language, all the time, which you don't get a chance to do, as much here in San Angelo. You just have to find the right places to go practice. You can go to the Azteca and you could probably speak Spanish, as much as you want. But going down there just to connect back to the culture and get to know that part of Mexico, which I'd never been before. So it was great. We went there for Thanksgiving, 2.5 weeks.
Wow, that's awesome to get to spend that much time and really explore. I'm sure.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And I know, so personally, whenever I travel, my big thing is I got to try the food.
Yeah,
I got to try the food.
Yeah.
That having been as many places as you have? What has the food experience been like? I'm sure you've gotten to try stuff in a lot of the different places.
You just have to be open to it, even if it doesn't turn out well and you don't like it.
Do you have an example for maybe where you tried something and it didn't turn out well?
This trip to Mexico we done last year too, around Thanksgiving, and on that trip I was like, I am trying everything.
Yeah.
And my wife is the opposite. She likes to stick to very specific things. She's very careful, and I'm like, no, I'm trying it all. And I'd seen some videos on TikTok, and I was like, oh, this is the place that I saw. We're gonna go. It was like this market where you can buy fresh fruit, and they've got all these vendors and stuff. I was like, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna try this food. And I was sick the entire time, the rest of the time that we were there.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's what you always hear that you're scared about. And I've been to Mexico a few times, and I've never had anything happen.
It depends on where you go. It just depends on, it's a roll of the dice, really.
Yeah.
It's really what it is. And great. It was amazing. It was so delicious. But I paid the ultimate price for that. It was, just cramps and oh man, I don't know, and just taking medicine, and thankfully, the medicine down there is so inexpensive, and you most of the time you don't need a prescription for some of the stuff that you need a prescription for up here, so it made it a little bit more tolerable for sure. But this time around when we went back, I did not go back to this place. I tried other places, but I did not go back to that.
Learned your lesson on that one?
Yeah, we stuck to more of the restaurants, sit-down places, and it was great. I think you can probably work your way up to being more tolerant of that kind of food, but you have to be there for a bit, I think.
Yeah. Maybe a couple months next time, catch that place at the end of your trip.
Yeah. In Inverness, it wasn't as risky, obviously, in Scotland, but I did try haggis.
Oh, and so tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. Haggis is a sheep's stomach?
Yeah.
But there's another meat put inside of it?
Yeah, I can't remember what the meat is. My wife is not down for trying new stuff like that. And she loves Scotland. And I was like, give it to me. I'm ready. Let's do it. And I loved it. Yeah. I enjoyed it very much. It reminded me of barbacoa. Have you had barbacoa?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It kind of, haggis reminded me a little bit of barbacoa.
Really?
It might have had some of the same sort of meat that's in there as well. But it was great. I loved it.
That's super interesting. So I could sit here and talk about food and travel all day. I have one more question that I have to ask about Scotland. And then we pulled up to the Pop Art Museum a second ago, and we'll jump out and check out your piece.
Let's do it.
So I got to ask it. Did you wear a kilt in Scotland?
Nope.
No?
No. I kind of wish I would have.
Yeah, just to try it?
Just to try out the look. Maybe I will in the future, I think. I might give it a shot.
No, the reason that I ask is because I was wearing my robe at the house the other day, and I was thinking to myself, because you see somebody wearing a kilt and you're like, why wouldn't you just wear pants? But I was walking around in this robe and I was kind of thinking to myself, I could kind of see what the kilt thing's about. It's a little more open, a little more flowy of a situation going on.
I think so. I think it's really comfortable, probably. Yeah. The loose clothing, especially in Mexico, because it's so hot down there. I did buy some clothes down there that were very loose, and it feels very nice when you're walking around. As opposed to when we first got down there, I was wearing jeans, and I was like, oh, this is big mistake. It's terrible mistake.
Yeah, I know exactly.
2 showers a day down there for sure. The humidity's high, but it's worth it. Beautiful. Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. Well, let's jump out and let's check out the pop art museum. Cool.
Oh, we got the goodie bag over here.
Remember that scene in John Wick where he's got the big bag of guns and
Oh,
stuff?
yeah. Oh, yeah. You do look very John Wick-esque. I see it. I see it.
Except with paint. Yeah, so this is the Pop Art Museum, another Art and Commonplaces project. A lot of local artists here, really amazing artists.
So what is pop art?
So pop art is, how would I describe pop art? Pop art is all about what's happening in the zeitgeist, popular culture.
Okay.
What's top of mind for everybody. Whether it's movies, whether it's culture, whether it's comic books, music. What are the things that are most prominent, top of mind subjects?
Gotcha.
That stand out for people. And most of the time it's portraiture, sometimes it's cartoons, sometimes it's a mix of those things, sometimes it's symbolic, but that's how I would describe pop art.
Gotcha. And I felt like I needed to ask because when we went to the paintbrush alley, I felt like I could feel a theme, and like I feel a theme here, but it's also just like feels a little bit like in a lot of directions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like I don't even know where to start. There's so much stuff going on around here. You almost like don't even know where to look.
Yeah, that's, you just kind of take your time and walk around like a museum, know?
Yeah.
So you just kind of take your time and you walk around, and one of the prominent figures here in town, if we want to look at the front here, I'll show you guys one of his pieces.
Oh, definitely.
This artist is probably one of the biggest artists to come out of San Angelo in the last...
Are we going inside here or
right
outside?
outside this right here, in the last like 100 years.
Really?
Yeah, he was part of the pop art movement, and that's James Francis Gill.
Oh, wow.
You scan his code, or just look him up on Google. He was one of the first artists to popularize Marilyn Monroe in artwork, even before Andy Warhol did.
Really?
And he was part of the group, and he showed with Andy Warhol.
And this guy's from San Angelo?
He's still here. He's alive.
He's still here in San Angelo?
Yeah, he lives a little bit outside of town. I've met him once. I'd known who he was. I knew his son and collaborated with his son when I had the gallery, and so I knew a lot about him. I had his books and stuff like that. And this one time I saw him at Dillard's.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just a huge fan of yours. He was with his granddaughter, and he was like, oh yeah, he said hi to me or whatever, and really cool guy. But his artwork's worth, a print is worth $8,000, $10,000, $12,000.
Really?
His originals go up to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000.
Oh my gosh.
So probably much more than that now, but yeah. So this is actually a protected real print of his.
Really?
This is actually one of his pieces. It's a wonder how it's not come off, but I mean, it's iconic. This is one of the most iconic pieces he's ever done.
That's insane because, I've come by, this is kind of like an epiphany moment for me. And I don't even know if I'm using that term right, but I've come by this piece of art so many times and I had no idea about any of that.
Yeah.
And it's always stood out to me. It's in a prominent position. It's right here at the front. It's framed, but I had no idea any of that. And just the fact that guy, I'm not even I'm trying to just reel in my head over all the information you just gave us. But the fact that he's still alive here in San Angelo.
He's still making art too.
Still making art.
He's still making art.
Is I think that's one of the coolest things.
Yeah, he travels to Germany quite often to sell his work over there, but he sells internationally, obviously.
That is amazing.
He's an amazing artist. Yeah, he grew up here, moved to LA, or I think it was California, ended up developing his artwork there, and then, ended up coming back. He took a break in the 70s, I think,
but he ended up coming back, and yeah,
That is awesome.
pretty amazing.
That is so cool.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
I want to come back and get a picture by that now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Somebody, so that the piece that we're walking up on, so I did this one over here, but to the left, somebody did a portrait of him.
Oh, wow.
So that's
Oh, yeah,
him.
and I recognize the Marilyn Monroe in the background.
That's right. So that's him right there. That's James Francis Gill.
That is awesome. Yeah, and I mean, just the fact that this guy's still around and you have one of his pieces of art right out here and then just a homage to him right around the corner.
I know.
That's so cool.
It's pretty wild. James Dean.
James Dean.
The mural.
Oh, yeah.
And the movie Giant was a film with Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, and also people are going to really be angry that I forgot.
Cool, man. So you brought a little bit of your paint with you.
Yeah.
And you're going to do a couple of touch-ups on this piece over here.
Yeah, it needs some. It's fading. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit here. And
See, I personally, that's a bold move, what you're about to do. You are wearing a very nice jacket, my friend, and you are about to do a little spray paint in it.
This is actually one of my oldest. It's got paint on it already.
Oh, really?
See here, yeah.
The old painting jacket, okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say, that's why you're the professional. I'm going to stand back.
Almost all my clothes ends up like this, so it's all good. So we're going to see what we can do.
But no, now I'm going to have to go around and check out all these pieces when they were first put up after you showed me your last piece at the Paintbrush Alley and what a difference it was when it was first put up.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I never would have even thought, because I'm so impressed in general when I come out here in the first place. Like the fact that it could have looked better at one point. I'm like, wow.
That's what with outside artwork, that's what can happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of these have faded, but most of them have stayed, I think, pretty well. I originally did this one with just paint out of the tube again, just because that's what I was more used to.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but as you're kind of adding this outline here, is this is his hair, the black in the background?
Yeah.
It's crazy to me because like when we first walked up to it, it kind of looked like a shadow to me, and I was kind of trying to see where it began and stopped. But as you just added that outline, it literally just added a whole nother level of clarity to it.
Yeah, if you look up a picture of him, he's a famous artist from the 80s. Was a graffiti artist that came out of New York. His name is Basquiat.
Basquiat? I've heard the name before.
And he's a very, very famous artist. So they were like, yeah, paint whoever you want. I was like, I'm doing Basquiat, that's for sure.
I mean, that's another one of those things that, like, outsider's perspective, I would have never even thought about. Like
spraying the brush.
Applying the spray paint directly to the brush.
Yeah. You do what you can, and you figure out little tricks here and there. It's there are these spray tips that will that you can attach. You can take it off the tip and put a fat tip on it or a thin tip. But it only works with specific brands of spray paint. So I have the tips, but I don't have the brand of paint that it'll work with.
Gotcha.
But it helps whenever like you need to do like a wide area. You can do a wide spray, or if you need a thin line, it'll help you do that thin line.
Gotcha.
But in this case, I was like, a brush will work. If I just spray it really quick and then apply it.
Yeah, because in my mind, I see all these different size lines and, you know, different things on all these different pieces of art. And I just can't even wrap my mind around how somebody could do that. But as you kind of break it down for me a little bit, it makes it, I can understand it, how you could do it.
Yeah.
It almost like outsider's perspective looking in, it almost kind of seems like magic.
It does.
Because I'm just like, I couldn't even begin on where to start.
It feels like that when you're first starting. Like when you're just starting out, like it's all very intimidating.
Yeah.
especially murals, especially big stuff. You're like, oh, I could never do that.
Yeah.
That sounds insane. But after a while, you realize it's just the same steps. You're just doing it bigger. And so it helps to look at it from that perspective.
That makes sense when you say it like that. So let me ask you a question here. What do you do if you make a mistake? Can you make a mistake? Is
sure.
everything kind of just always in motion and like can be changed, or how do you think about it?
I think it's if you're planning it really well, I think you can avoid the mistakes. Difficult to learn when you're plan it too much.
Gotcha.
But everything dries.
Everything dries, yeah.
You just paint over it.
But what I'm getting at is kind of like the thought process is like, oh, if I do something that maybe I don't like at the end of the day, I'll come back and do it how I want later on.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You can do that at home. You can do that here.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit extra time to cover it up, but yeah, I think it's all doable.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm just used to working with the pencil and eraser, so I know there ain't no erasing these lines.
I think that's what catches some people off guard, is that they're like intimidated by the idea of making a mistake, especially publicly. You know, I know when people look around town, they're like, oh, that doesn't look very good anymore. But I'm like, hey, man, like I gave it my best shot, and you know, I learned from it really well, and I'm willing to come back and give it another go.
That's kind of a theme that I'm taking from just the conversations we've had so far today, is like you embrace your mistakes. You kind of just use it, like it almost sounds like you don't even consider them mistakes and more of like learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only way I think I can get to where I want to go.
Yeah. No, I think that's just such an awesome mindset. I think it's really cool. It's a mindset that I personally try to adopt as well.
I think most artists you'll find are like that. A lot of the ones that I know, they're comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, with making mistakes.
I guess you kind of have to be.
You kind of have to be to do that. To be a good artist is the product of being a good artist is the result of making many mistakes.
Yeah. That's a pretty profound quote right there.
But in my opinion, I think the best artists are the ones that I did an interview for our podcast with an artist named Keith Stinnett. Which one did he do? He did this one that's got the black frame on it.
Oh, okay.
Great artist, amazing. Was a firefighter for 30 years, retired, and then became an artist. He's a phenomenal dude. Yeah. He is one of the best artists right now in town. My opinion.
Yeah.
My opinion. There's a lot of great artists here, but he's one of my favorites. And he looks at art as being very impermanent. He doesn't attach himself to his work at all. He's just like, I'm there to do it, and whatever happens to it afterwards, I don't really care.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's where the best work comes out of, because he's emotionally present while he's making. After it's done, he's moving on to the next thing. He's like, that's done, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, if someone who buys it, that's great, but he doesn't care.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
That's the best kind of artist that you can hope for.
That is awesome.
So I try to emulate that as much as I can, because he's got that vibe about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cannot get this open. You want to give it a go? Oh wait, never mind. I got it.
So I know you were kind of talking earlier about collaborating with some other artists in San Angelo.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of just collaborations going on in San Angelo in
Not
general?
as many as I would like to see. Do they get together and collaborate and bring their art together? Yes.
Yeah.
But do they all work on the same piece together? No.
Gotcha.
I want to do more of that.
Yeah.
That to me sounds fun.
Yeah.
Because I get to get more intimate with their process of making, and then I can learn more. I can only learn right now by the things that I try. That's great, but that only gives me one lane. If I collaborate with somebody else that does something completely different, a different way, I get to learn from them. Yeah. And you can only do that, I think, if you're working on the same piece together.
Yeah.
So I want to do more of that, because I think that sounds fun. I'm glad we waited.
Yeah.
Because this morning would have been horrible. I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, I'd have been curled up in a ball in the corner just trying to stay
You would have been
warm.
in the truck filming me from the truck. You're doing great.
Yeah. I'm here for moral support.
Yeah.
But no, man, and I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for letting us come capture this.
Yeah, man,
And just
it's
coming
great.
out with us today. I think this is going to be such a cool thing for, you know, I'm hoping this video goes nuts. Everyone's excited about it. But my hope with this video is just that specifically that people in San Angelo see it
Yeah.
and just kind of understand. Because I mean, as a San Angelo resident myself and not an artist, I drive through the city and I see all these pieces of art, and it just makes me think, and I love it. And I'm so appreciative to all the artists who spend their time working on these things. And then just to see how it comes together, like, it really is cool. And I just wanted to tell you thank you for letting us
Yeah, man.
kind of watch this process.
Happy to do it. One of my fondest memories was when I was a kid, and I would say I was really privileged when I was a kid. I don't say that lightly, because I realize not everybody has the same opportunities. But going to high school in Europe was really interesting, because we would have like these, like, you know, you have a club you can join in high school, chess club, public speaking, speech club or whatever. Over there, if you joined like a French club, their biggest thing of the year was to go to France.
Oh, wow.
And you'd go there for like a week during spring break with the French club. And I was in, I forgot what club I was with, but we ended up going to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. And that was my first real experience with art. And it was his originals, the real ones that he did. And I was only 2 feet away from them. And it was like, it sticks out like a memory, like a really profound memory for me.
That is amazing.
And I never would have had that opportunity. But of course, we can't have a Van Gogh here.
Yeah.
I mean, we can have paintings of Van Gogh, but we can't have the originals. But having the artists that are living here, that are actually making the kind of work that like James Gill does, and he's still here, to be able to have that conversation, talk about the art that they're making, watch them make it as a kid, to being able to see that here in San Angelo, it changes their lives. They start to change the way they think about the way they want to live their lives. And they go, maybe I want to be an artist.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to continue to pursue what I'm doing and try it. And they're doing it. And I can see they're here in the town that I live in. I didn't think anything was in San Angelo, which is what a lot of little kids say.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so important. You know?
And dude, I know exactly what you mean when you say that too. Like, I remember as a little kid, I didn't really like, you know, I took a very unique path in my career, and I'm not going to get into all that. But I remember as a kid, I didn't see a lot of successful people all around me. But I had a few select people in my family that really stood out as far as like just working hard and, you know, trying to move their life along. And that, you know, I didn't realize at the time, but as I got older, I realized that how often I would think, well, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it.
Sure.
You know, and it was somebody in my family. So I was like, oh yeah, I see that path. And I think that's what's going to be cool about this video specifically is like, you know, but just like you just said, you live here in San Angelo and you're able to, you know, make this amazing art and do these things. And I hope that is the message that people take away from this, at least, you know, the kids and the younger generation who hopefully see this video, is that, you know, you can do this too.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We started doing the some art meetups for artists last year with the art community. You know, just getting them together. And I was like blown away by the fact that there was a high schooler that came.
Yeah.
I was like, how did you know about this? She was like, I saw it online. And I was like, well, let me see your artwork. And she's great. And it was so cool to see like some of those younger kids coming out and wanting to be a part of it. And it's like, you know, that's the next wave of artists that we're going to start to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like just like anything else, there's like the changing of the guard, and the next generation comes in and, you know, puts their own twist on things. I mean, literally, just like we were talking about with the art farm, just gotten taken over by a new a new ownership group, and just like, you know, the art continues in its own form, I guess, is what it feels like.
Yeah. I'm like, sometimes I think, I was like, am I the old guard?
Yeah.
I'm like, when did that happen? When did I become the old guard? Oh, no, I'm still with y'all. I'm with the new guard. I try to convince myself.
Yeah. So, like, I know you were saying you went to Central, correct?
Yeah, for like a few months.
A few months? Okay.
Yeah.
Was there an art program at Central when you were there, or were you even into something like that at that time?
I really wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I was going to be into at that point. I was a bit of a loner.
Yeah.
Because, you know, senior
Yeah.
year, you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's already got their friends.
Yeah.
Like, I did meet a few friends that are still, we're close now still. But no, I wasn't really into art then. I was into art when I was a kid, really young. And then it kind of fell off. And then I didn't pick it up until I was an adult. So I've only been really seriously painting since that 2011.
2011.
Yeah. I did a little bit when I was in high school, but it was just for fun. I wasn't being serious.
Yeah. Did you always kind of have like a natural talent for art?
I would say that I had an eye for drawing,
Yeah.
you know,
And
but
that-
not for painting. That was something that came much later.
But yeah, I'm wondering, I know you were saying that you had some people from Central go to one of the art meetups. Do you know of anything like specifically oriented towards like younger, maybe high school age type people that were interested in getting involved in the art community here in San Angelo?
Like, do I know of anything like a program specific for that?
Yeah, so like for conversation's sake, I was doing an interview with somebody who was a barber, and they were actually telling me that they went to Central as well, and that Central had their own, cosmetology school within the school.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
And kind of like put them on that path. So I was just wondering if there was anything like, and I'm sure there's something. I just didn't know if there was anything that stood
I think
out to you.
Lakeview has a sort of like a program like that where they do projects with the kids in the art program. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know the head of the art program at Lakeview. And she does a phenomenal job. We're trying to collaborate a little bit more. I told her last time I saw her, I was like, hey, hit me up. You want me to come down to the school anytime, you let me know.
Yeah.
In fact, we're supposed to be helping Inx and myself. We're going to help Ambleside. They're doing a mural project, and we're going to help advise them next week, I think, sometime.
Nice.
Go and just talk to the kids. Hey, if you're going to do this, here's what you think you need to do. For me, it's going to be like, use good paint.
Tell them some of those things you wish you'd have known back in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just touching up a little bit here, but I'm pretty much done for right now. I'm not going to do this whole thing while we're out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like just the touches that you've made. I can tell.
It needed it so bad. I can tell I need some other colors though, in order for me to do a really good job. But it's already breathing some life back in.
No, man. The one thing I just think it's cool. I do want to ask you the question that I've asked you at your other pieces of art. Just if we were standing here with somebody who was happened to walk into the art museum, what would you want them to know about this piece, or what would you want to point out, or something that you think's interesting about it?
The subject. A
Subject.
lot of people don't know who Basquiat is.
Yeah.
And Basquiat is he was such a artist. He really focused on the message of his work. He was never shy about the way that he made artwork, and it was so different at that time because it was using some street art elements, which when you're painting street art and you're literally doing it illegally,
Yeah.
you have to do it quickly. You have to have sort of an instinct, behind what you're making. And he was so raw with it that, it was so different. Some people don't even like it. Some people don't even think his artwork is artwork.
Yeah.
But because he was so honest with it, if you look at his artwork, he was just all about making things that he knew about.
And that to me is like the best kind of artist.
Yeah.
So if people look him up, Basquiat, and look at his work, look at it through that lens,
Yeah.
and you'll learn something about it.
How cool, man. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I kind of wanted to dig into was, what your personal art style, kind of what are some of the things that you focused on in the past? And, I've seen your website, I've seen some of your work, but I was just kind of wondering, like, how do you think about that? There, I was noticing there were some themes amongst some of your work, and you seem to kind of rotate in and out of different themes. Am I picking up on that correctly? Or, just how do you go about that?
That was really the biggest, I guess, issue that I was trying to figure out early on in my art career. Like the first 10 years, I think, I didn't realize that I was practicing. Even though I was running a business, from the purely creative standpoint for the artwork, I was really just practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just doing things that I was interested in painting. So that's why I kind of looked like it was bouncing around a lot. But I remember when I first started, I could only do a portrait that was looking straight at the camera. I couldn't do from the side. I couldn't do looking up. I couldn't do standing. I couldn't do the body. I couldn't do hands. I couldn't do a building. Like I couldn't do nothing.
Yes.
And I was an artist, Lori Justice Pace. She's out of Dallas. She kind of mentored me for a short while, and she was like, your style would really translate well if you could get a handle on some of these other things. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. She's like, well, you're just gonna have to try. And I did, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible the first few that I did. But I was really determined because I was like, I really want to figure out how to do these because I really love being able to capture some of these things. And so I just kind of worked at it. And the more I worked at it, the more I was intrigued by trying to capture other themes that I was more familiar with. So you mentioned something about hip hop earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up around hip hop. I grew up in the 90s. I remember being, a young teen and waiting for the latest, Biggie album to drop. And I remember going to get the CD and the album and, the golden era of hip hop. I remember being around for that and listening, and it really had a big impression on me. And I still listen to it a lot, and I still use it as inspiration. In fact, I think that's the thing that I'm moving towards right now is what were the main influences of hip hop for me, and not just the rappers, not just the music, but the way they created it, the culture of hip hop, which really in its essence is taking something that exists and mixing it with something else that you're familiar with, but doing it in your style.
Yeah.
That's the essence of hip hop. And so I'm exploring those themes now, especially living where I'm at, in West Texas and traveling, to Mexico and connecting to my roots. A lot of those themes are starting to show through more now. I'm more confident in being able to mix different things together because I'm not like, oh, I suck at this and I suck at this and I suck at that. I don't know how to make those things, work. But now I've practiced so much the first decade that I can pull all these different things together. And, I did this piece recently where it was like this really beautiful cloud sunset in the background, and the clouds were just, the picture I pulled from was like, man, these clouds are amazing, but I think I can do it. And but then in the foreground it was all abstract, and then there was a guy on a horse, but he was all in black and white. But I can do all of that because I've done it all already. So that's kind of where my artwork is now. Is just now I can play around, push things, I can play with abstract, I can play with hyperrealism because I've just practiced so much doing all that. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought up the hip hop stuff because that's one thing that when I was going through, some of your art online, that resonated with me. I grew up in Dallas. I love hip hop. I love music. It is just rap music for me. But like just seeing you express it in a different way, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I saw like, you had some Biggie, some Tupac, a bunch of different things. And, I just thought all that stuff was so cool.
Yeah, that's the modern West that I was talking about earlier. Is the modern West is the idea of people like me, people like you, other folks that are moving to the rural West and bringing those influences and ideas with him and mixing it with traditions and contemporary ideas of the West. And now they're kind of mixing together because, things are evolving. But I would like to express that visually so people can get a beat on what's happening here and what kind of people are here. I mean, that's how you really kind of judge a place, is by the artwork and the businesses and the culture of the town. That's how you get a feel for, this area is kind of cool because it's got murals of if you look at the historic murals like right down here, you can see, it's got a traditional vibe to it. But then you go like a block over and then you see like Inx's mural and you're like, oh wow, like it's a both of those things together at the same time.
Yeah.
And that to me is kind of what my version of the modern West is like. I can take my experiences growing up in Europe, mixed with hip hop, mixed with my culture, being a Mexican, and then also living here in West Texas, and whatever ideas come out of that for me is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And that I'm down with that. That sounds really cool.
That does sound really cool.
It sounds fun.
Another thing that I noticed, like obviously we're in West Texas, obviously the natural culture that comes along with that. You got horses, cattle, rodeo, farm life. Arguably the biggest event that goes on in San Angelo is the San Angelo Stock Show and Rodeo. I noticed on your website that you do rodeo portraits.
Yeah.
So one, how did that come about? And then two, what is the difference when you're doing like a portrait versus just a piece of art that you want to do? Because I mean, obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand a portrait is like, you're drawing a person, a real life person, versus like, coming up with your own concept and idea. Just what are the differences in that?
Yeah, the rodeo portraits came out because I was already doing Westerns.
Okay.
And so I was kind of very close to that. And some folks that come to me to get their portraits because they're in the rodeo, one of the first ones that came to me were like, we love your work. We would love to see you do your own version of, a picture of, me on a horse or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then it just took off after that. And I started getting more business specifically from people in that industry. Yeah. So that's how that came about. But the difference between doing a regular painting and doing a portrait is a regular painting can come out of an experience, a memory, an idea, and it can take on a life of its own, be its own thing. And a portrait is something very specific, and it's focused on an individual. And when you're doing a portrait of somebody, you're really just trying to capture the essence of that person in your artwork. And you're just really trying to honor their personality. It'd be great if you knew who they were. Yeah. But if you knew something about them, it helps. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just have what you're looking at. And there's this really good example of that. There's a painting of Winston Churchill that was commissioned, and they commissioned an artist to paint him. And the guy did such a good job of painting Winston Churchill as he actually was that Churchill hated it and had it destroyed.
Too accurate?
Because it was too accurate. And not in its like mechanics in terms of accuracy, but in sense of capturing who he was.
Gotcha.
And he hated it because it made him look weak, but it was just real. It was just, and he sat with him. It was a studio painting, and he was sitting with Churchill the entire time. You want to watch how that came about, watch The Crown, like season 3, I think.
Oh, really? They reference that?
It's like 3 episodes just of that, and it's really, really interesting to watch. And they even show an image of the painting because I think there is an image that exists of it, but the painting itself doesn't exist. And that's kind of a really great way of answering the question about what's the difference between capturing a portrait and doing a regular painting. Is the portrait is meant to capture the essence of the person. And it doesn't always have to be photorealistic. it can be impressionist, it can be abstract, it can be hyper realist.
So when you're doing a portrait yourself, do you if you can, do you try to reach out to that person and actually get to know them a little bit? Or most people, when they commission you, are they here's a picture of me, that should do, and what comes of that?
Honestly, I think I've only done a portrait of somebody maybe a handful of times where I actually knew who they were.
Gotcha.
So it rarely ever comes up that the person that's asking me to do the portrait is of them themselves.
Gotcha.
It rarely happens. But when it does, I like to get to know a little bit about what they do. And the rodeo portraits are probably the best example of that, because they are of the people that I'm, that either commissioned or you're a family member of them.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I ask them a little bit about rodeo. How often you go to rodeo? What got you into this? And that gives me a little bit of background.
Yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So when you do typically when you do a rodeo portrait, are we talking about the people who are winning the rodeo, the big stars, or just anybody who's associated in that field as far as rodeo goes? And the reason that I asked, my little brother went to Tarleton State and he was on the rodeo team. If he was to reach out to you and say he wanted to do a rodeo portrait, would that be something that you're open to, or do you kind of go for the more established people, or is there any kind of criteria?
I pretty much only do commissions of rodeo portraits of people that want something done of themselves or somebody in the family. All the ones you saw online are of people that asked for it to be done of them or a family member.
Oh, wow.
None of those are of anybody famous in the rodeo circuit or anything like that. They're people that asked for those portraits to be done.
Yeah.
And they're great. I love doing them because it's it's action oriented. It's not a picture of somebody, in the middle of a landscape on a horse and they're just, they're cattle driving or they're doing something like that. They're competing, they're focused. It's an action shot. To me, those are just full of energy because you can see it in their presence that they are engaged in what they're doing, hyper focused, and that is interesting to capture on canvas in a painting. Really interesting.
Yeah,
for me.
I definitely understand what you mean. So I guess I have 2 more questions and then we can kind of wrap this thing up. And of course, as I feel like I'm at my final questions, I'm going to go mind blank. Man, what was I about to say? Don't you better edit this out, Mark. Okay. What I was wondering was, a lot of people that I've talked to in the past, they're either, they have a chosen field. They're either an artist, a businessman, or whatnot. I think it's super interesting that, like I said earlier, I consider you a very successful businessman as well as an artist. How do those 2 things overlap?
It's a great question. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering 2 things. One, how do those things overlap? And then what advice would you have for somebody who is an artist but may not be as business savvy trying to grow their business?
That is the biggest question I have had to answer for myself since I started. And the simple answer is that they don't mix. No, they not naturally. It's like oil and water. They are, business to me is the antithesis of art. They're not inherently made to go together. And when an artist isn't prepared for that and they force themselves, they take a big hit.
Yeah.
Michelangelo, who painted the Sistine, it took him years to do that. He freaking hated painting it. He hated painting that thing. And I understand that feeling whenever you're having to do something for the business aspect of it. My advice is that, learn how to make art first for yourself.
Gotcha.
If you come into this wanting to just sell art, and you don't have a good handle on why you make art in the first place, you'll be able to probably make a decent go at it, but eventually your artwork will suffer and you'll suffer because you'll fall out of love with it and it'll turn into a commodity. And it's the same like in actual business. Like if you have like a business idea, like let's say that you wanted to sell like this is gonna be cliche, but if you wanted to get into like vaping and you wanted to sell vapes because you wanted to make money, but you don't care about vaping, you've never vaped, like eventually you're gonna be like, well, the minute it stops making money is just the minute you're gonna move to something else.
Yeah.
But when you're passionate about something, whether it's making money or not, you're gonna stick with it because you love it. It's what you do. And so to me, that's a pretty decent analogy for artwork in business. If you love what you do first and then you want to turn it into a business, great. Just know that the business part always comes after the artwork. The artwork always has to come first, especially when you're making something by hand. Like if you try to turn it into a manufacturing process from the get-go without the creativity being the focus, it'll have no soul. It'll be a shell of something that's supposed to have a soul. and I don't think it will be as successful. And even if it was successful, it won't last very long because you're just not into it anymore.
Yeah.
And so my advice to artists is like, focus on the artwork first. Think about why you want to make art for yourself. And once you've nailed that down, set it aside and then focus on the business aspect in terms of what are the fundamentals that you need to learn. Try to get it out of your head that business is boring and that you hate financials and you hate working with numbers. Try to get that out of your head and just focus on those things being like the brick and mortar of this, art business that you're trying to create. It's the foundation. So you have to have a good handle on that. And if you can learn to do that, then I think you'll do great if you can separate those two, but they're not inherently made to go together.
That's one, that sounds like super solid advice. Two, that was super interesting. I never even thought about how contradictory the ideas of art and business are.
I've studied them, man. I've read books. I've been inside online communities. I've studied my own experience with it and how it burned me out. And I quit my art business for like a good 2 years because I didn't have an answer to that question and understanding why I was suffering so much.
And did you feel like you almost had to solve that for yourself before you could come back to it?
Absolutely. It was either that or I was just going to stop altogether.
Yeah.
And so, I had to answer that question for myself. And it took me a long time, 2 years to do that. And, but once I answered it, I was like, okay, now I understand. And now I feel more at peace with what I made.
I was going to say, kind of the way you're talking about it is almost like a weight lifted off and you're kind of like able to move a little more free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even to the extent where I had to go back to therapy to answer that for myself.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It helped so much because I was able to dig deeper into why I was making art. Where does it come from? For an artist, it always comes from a real place. And so being able to talk about your experiences being alive and as a human being, that's the whole point of art. Artwork is supposed to communicate our personal experiences so that others that don't know how to talk about it can relate to it and be like, oh, I understand this feeling of this painting I'm looking at. It doesn't require me to read a book or even be vulnerable myself. I can just look at this painting and it resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because the artist did all the hard work of having to dig up all those emotions and figure out how to visually communicate it. And that's kind of the job of the artist.
Dude, that's powerful.
It is.
What you just said is so powerful and just really makes me like, I don't know, just appreciate, one, all the hard work that artists really put in, and then two, how blessed we are to live in a community like San Angelo where there's all these great people and great artists who have really made a point to just inject that into the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, even more so the younger artists for me. I'll leave on this note because I know we're heading up soon, but the most important thing that's going on in the art community right now, in my opinion, is what the younger artists are doing. Not to say the older artists don't have anything to say. I think they do. But the young artists, in my opinion, have the most to say right now for a number of reasons. One is a lot of them went through school during the pandemic. And that experience I can't even begin to relate to. So it's incredibly unique thing to talk about in their artwork. Second is the fact that a lot of them, and I don't know, how old you are, but I didn't go through training in my high school or my school for how to deal with a school shooter. I remember Columbine, that was my freshman year, and then third is like the recession that we went through in 08 through 2010. A lot of these younger artists went through all of that, and it was sequential. It was like that, and then that, and then that. And now you can see all of those things that they went through are all communicated through their artwork. It reminds me of the art movements that came out of like the Industrial Revolution. All of the Impressionists came out of the Industrial Revolution, and their artwork we still talk about to this day.
Yeah.
So I think the artwork that's coming out now for the next 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to be talking about for the next couple hundred years, are probably coming from the young artists that we have in the community right now.
Really?
Yeah, because I've been to it. I went to an art show that was put on by, it was either Central or Lakeview senior class. It was profound what they were talking about. They were talking about real stuff, like real, it wasn't like little, painting of a tree or a sunset. No, it was real stuff that they'd been through. And I was like, yeah, this is profound. So right now, in my opinion, I think that the focus should be on the younger artists, giving them a platform to express their artwork, giving them space to do it, giving them support to do it, like supplies, art supplies, because they're expensive and a lot of them don't have the money to get it. Giving them, if we can make the free lessons, make them free or very low cost, and you just support them as much as possible, because the voice that I was just talking about, where you feel like you went through something difficult but you don't know how to express it, those kids are talking about it right now. And those are the ones that are going to grow, and the baton's going to pass to them, and they're going to be leading the community and doing things that are going to spread more of that artwork and the things that are going on right now in a broader sense. So yeah,
I once again, there's been a couple things that we've talked about today that's one of those things that just kind of leaves me speechless. But when I hear you say that, what comes to mind for me is a quote that I've heard before where it says, hard times make strong men make easy times make weak men, and then the cycle kind of repeats. And what I take away from that is that what in the world right now, we've been going through some hard times, and some really strong men and women are going to come out of that. And it's going to be really cool to see. It's one of those things where when you're in it and all this stuff is going on, it seems like it's the worst stuff in the world. But this will be a time that we look back on in the future and we say, wow, those hard times made all this cool stuff possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
cool, man.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. And once again, thank you. And so if somebody wants to check out your stuff again, what is the website one more time?
Yeah, AlejandroFineArt.com or SanAngeloArt.com to view the San Angelo series that I have. Still working, still putting out new work for that. But yeah, those are the best two places, and all my socials are connected.
All your socials are connected?
Yes, they're connected there.
Well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much.